Hey everybody, super excited again for a slightly different twist to Super Excited. And today I'm here with Jamie Bartlett, a renowned author, written a new book on the Crypto Queen and an amazing podcast. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it. We'll have a link at the below. But before I go into that, maybe Jamie, you give a bit of an introduction into yourself and how you got into writing and maybe just a bit of background on yourself, and we'll take it from there. How does that sound?
Sure, that's great. Well, thanks very much for having me, Stefan. Yeah, so I'm a technology writer. I got into writing about technology on a simple premise, really. I just felt like most ordinary people I knew didn't understand what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
And I felt, maybe arrogantly, that I could turn some of this complicated technology into things that made sense to like my mom or my granddad. You know what I mean? That was my simple motivating vision way back in like 2008, 2009, when I was trying to explain what social media was to my grandmother, who was like, I mean, I was naive because I was saying to her, Facebook is this, it's amazing, we're going to chat. And she was like, don't trust it. There's a snap. Why? Who's paying for this? And I was like, don't worry about Don't worry about it. But what do they want from me? Don't worry about the details, Nan. So I was always trying to make technology understandable to people somehow. And to do that, you've often got to be lucky enough to find a good story, like a vehicle to do that. Yeah. So then I wrote a book about the darknet in 2015.
Ooh.
The book was called The Darknet. It was all about darknet markets and internet subcultures and Nazi groups online and radical movements online. It was basically I spent a year in the darkest corners of the net. So fascinating time. But one of the key things that I did there was to buy drugs on the darknet, on one of the Silk Road marketplaces. And then I ended up doing a TED talk about how do you buy drugs on the darknet. Now, that was really important for this story because it got me really into Bitcoin and how crypto worked. And I was fascinated by this payment system and what at the time, especially in 2013, 14, when I was writing it, it really was about cash, digital cash, being able to spend Bitcoin to buy things. And I was like, drug dealers, they love it. It's amazing for them. It makes perfect sense. So 2018, fast forward, a BBC documentary maker is at a dinner party, and a friend of a friend says to her, I've got this amazing new project for you. I think you should invest. I've invested. It's made me a lot of money already, and it's called OneCoin. Yeah. It's going to be the next Bitcoin. It's got this amazing Bulgarian-German businesswoman. She's totally legit. Unlike this Satoshi Nakamoto, no one knows who the hell that is. This woman's got a degree from Oxford University. And you should invest. You should invest in this. And she, being a journalist, is quite skeptical about it all. And she Googles it and she's like, that woman hasn't been seen in public for over a year. But then again, Satoshi Nakamoto hasn't been seen in public for 10 years. So maybe this is normal. And she calls me because she's seen my TED talk about buying and says, you seem to understand Bitcoin. Do you want to start looking into this with me? And the whole thing starts from there. And 4 years later, I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it. It's the only thing I've done really for 4 years.
Wow. Wow, what a journey. And 4 years on OneCoin. That's quite a journey. But I'm going to start a bit up front on the dark web, right? I mean, when I first got into Bitcoin, which was really early on, it was about 2012, and I got into Bitcoin, and it was really because of peers that I knew in the industry, in particularly software industry, because like you, I came up from a tech background. And so I sort of wandered into that or stumbled across Bitcoin through developers that introduced it to me. And then they were using software that I understood and I could see it. But one of the things that was really important was if a coin was used in the dark web, it was likely to be a coin that was going to be pretty successful, pretty in demand on the exchanges. And you would see volume and velocity around that. And one of the coins was obviously Bitcoin, and Monero and Zcash were some of the first coins that were really present on those platforms. And I was wondering, is that something that you sort of also found out or you realized? Yeah.
100%. The whole premise of the book that I'd written was check out what the criminals are doing, because
Yeah.
they work out use cases for things very early,
Yeah.
because they're forced to. Because they're often excluded from the sort of mainstream institutions.
Yeah.
That could be media or payment processing or whatever. They're looking for like new technologies that can help them, and strip aside the morality of it. You're looking at what pioneering new ways people are trying to use new tech, and it's often pornographers and
Yeah.
criminals who are figuring this stuff out. So I was always of the mind that they've actually worked out this has incredibly useful features.
Yeah.
And I look at the direction of travel and how people are getting worried about privacy and how more and more data is being collected about us and how banks are behaving. And I'm like, I really thought this has a future, this coin. It starts here on the dark web, maybe. Well, it starts, like you said, with a lot of techies who love crypto anarchy and it's fascinated by the software, but the use cases are going to be built up by the criminals at first, but have worked out the amazing properties. So I never bought it because I was very frustrated, but I always felt like I want to be able to talk about this objectively and never be accused of pushing it or because I own it. So although I should have done, because I wouldn't have had to have worked, so I wouldn't have had to have worried about that. But I really believed that not only that there was such an interesting sort of business case for it on the darknet, but the philosophy of crypto anarchy is the most original and one of the newest political ideas. That you don't get new political ideas turning up very often.
Yeah.
And when I started reading about crypto anarchy and the idea that sort of mathematical principles can secure privacy and security for individuals as that itself is a political ideology, I thought this is one of the newest and most original ideas in politics I've seen. So there's something fascinating about this. And I was just fascinated by it ever since. I never knew it was going to end up in the way that it did, and like huge investment banks putting billions in and all of the rest of it. But you never do you? You never know how it's going to unfold.
I mean, what got me hooked was really, like you said right at the beginning, was really, the peer-to-peer electronic cash system, right? That it really set out to be, where I could actually send money around the world and receive goods in return, and it would be immutable, right? Or services in my case. I was looking for services, and it was at no fees. It was instantaneous. And it was just a bliss to work with without having to go to the bank, wait 3 days, 4 days, pay a $70, $100, $700 fee for a transaction that had to then be sent via the internet. I mean, in those days, we had internet and PayPal that you would have thought already that would have been really easy, right? And I think, just the fact that all of a sudden you could trade and do transactions with people for services was,
Totally, and I also just think the basic idea of trying to use encryption and programming, I suppose, to introduce digital scarcity somehow, to think that there's a way of introducing scarcity into digital assets is a breathtaking thought, because so many of the assets that we own even today and that we value are digital, and it's inevitable that we want some scarcity on. People say, how could you sell an NFT? Because someone can just replicate it. And I think I can put a poster of the Mona Lisa up here. It doesn't mean it's the original Mona Lisa is not valuable. The opposite. It makes it more valuable because it has such cultural significance that I want a picture of it. So to me, that is an amazing thought.
And I think you said the word right there, right? Cultural significance. And when you were going into the dark web, you were, sort of researching sort of subcultures that were emerging under the hood, right? And there was a way to differentiate yourself from the mass media, right, if you will. And that subculture has just grown. What were some of the big things that you saw as you were going into those subcultures? I mean, anarchy, libertarianism is a big sort of part of why I think a lot of the OGs in crypto or blockchain or Bitcoin or Web3, whatever we want to call it now, that was one of the reasons why we all entered into it.
Crypto anarchy was the most interesting idea, political idea I saw in the dark web, or the interesting new alliances that were sort of struck between programmers and anons and drug dealers who are all sort of working out together, like how do we build something that the governments cannot really control. Just seemed to be like there was an excitement and an energy about it, and there were loads of terrible things about it too, obviously, that I had to address. But I was always just fascinated by the idea that 2012, 13, privacy as a vital precursor to individual freedom was clearly getting more and more important, and we're fearing the age in which every single thing we do is collected and stored, turned into a sophisticated algorithm that can predict our and our children's views and hopes and aspirations, and can be used to sell us things and sell us politicians, and it's quite terrifying. And it turns out that some of this like weird subculture darknet is maybe the answer to some of that stuff, or maybe is one of the and it's weird how society does that. Problems emerge, but somewhere in the darker depth, some weird corner that no one else knows or the authorities distrust, that's where you find the answer. And that's just was why I wanted to spend time there. And also the sense that most ordinary people, and certainly most mainstream journalists, did not understand it, and they'd be terrified of it.
They'd be terrified.
I would go on to I mean, this was really dark, but I spent a lot of time on eating disorder forums.
Okay.
They're really, really misunderstood places, because you'll read newspaper articles about eating disorder forums, and they imagine that it is a dark, nasty, cruel, bullying place. In fact, it's the kindest, most caring community you'll find online. Everyone's trying to help each other, but they're accidentally glamorizing and normalizing serious eating conditions. But if all you ever read about in the news is this horrible, scary, you're missing completely why people are drawn into it. And I just felt like so many aspects of internet culture and subculture, the mainstream media got completely wrong. Because they wouldn't go into it, they wouldn't look at it, they wouldn't spend time there. They just write a headline about how terrible it all was. So it was also about trying to show that the monster under the bed wasn't always as scary as you thought. And if you could look at it in the eye, you might learn something as well.
Yeah, and I think, partially, it's also sort of the attention span, right? And the clickbait that a lot of these mainstream medias are driven to achieve, right? They need to get quick views, they need audience, they need to hit their metrics, that as a corporation owned by some sort of shareholder or family that's been running this mainstream business for so many years, and they don't really look at proper research, etc. And I think that's what was interesting about your podcast and your book, where you're actually really spending, like you said, 4 years in sort of doing the research and really going deep. What does that take? And you went into some, you were definitely into some, but at least by the sounds of it, interesting and precarious situations, right?
Yeah, there is something interesting going on though at the moment with attention span and stuff, because I was so pessimistic about 4 or 5 years ago about this problem. We're all on social media. We can't concentrate. We just read the clickbait. We want everything in like short sound bites. But then suddenly people like Joe Rogan, and you forget about the actual content, is normalizing. You can talk for 4 hours about a subject and millions of people will listen if you do it properly. And I was worried about social media and attention spans, irrespective of whether you're left-wing, right-wing, centrist, radical, whatever. It was just about attention span and ability to consume complex ideas. I thought that was bad for democracy, full stop. I'm now very optimistic. Forgetting, again, I don't care who's on the Joe Rogan show. I'm very pleased that people are being demonstrated that 4 hours on one story at a deep level is possible. People will listen to that. So I hope we're actually beginning to change it. And that's why the podcast, I think, worked, because we were like, let's not oversimplify it. Let's get into the weeds. Let's show people, if you can do it in a compelling way, people will stick around for 8 hours on this story. Yes, you've got to inject insight, excitement, and ups and downs and drama. But you can talk about money laundering techniques, and people will listen once you've hooked them in. So we did, we went in deep, and people really liked that, and they really liked us being honest about things we didn't understand, about where we were hitting brick walls, about when we were frustrated, showing how we were trying to work out how we arrived at certain conclusions, because the age of the BBC journalist saying, "Here I am to explain to you people what the truth is a little bit over. People like to show how you're working out your theories and your ideas. There's a sort of transparency in the air. Bitcoin's probably part of that as well. This sort of idea that I want to know how it works. I want to know how you journalists have arrived at this conclusion. And podcasts are really great for that. They allow you to do that.
And I think that's the interesting, I mean, to me, I don't watch mainstream media. I don't have TV anymore. Anytime something comes up on CNN, BBC, Bloomberg, Fox News, I just don't listen to them anymore, because I just feel they're selling an agenda. There's no authenticity about it. There's no deep research. And the discussion is always cut short. Oh, because the advertiser or the editor is calling me saying, shut it off now, right? You got to switch to the next program, right? And so as a result, you're just numbed. You're numb to being dumb and stupid. And the more data that is available online and entrusted with these big institutions and big entities and governments, they want us to be even dumber and just manipulate us in the specific directions. And that's why we now have this bifurcation of, you're either on one side or the other side. There's nothing in the middle anymore. We don't have debates anymore. We can't have conversations, which is, I mean, in my opinion, we're basically turned up now in an age of total information overload. Yeah. That's true.
It sounds a strange thing to say, but there's too much.
Yeah, definitely.
Every argument, the opposite view can pull out their own facts and figures and data and stats and charts and blogs. And it's impossible for me or you to make sense of it. Yeah. Big corporations also struggle to make sense of it. And none of us quite know what the hell's going on. Yeah. And I think the only way, longer form detailed stuff is going to be the only answer to that, because I think you're right. In an age of information overload, all we can do is go with our guts. Yeah. That's why it's me versus you. It's my emotional feeling. Like, you're on my team. These guys aren't on my team. Yeah. Who knows what's the truth? So let's turn politics into a sport where we just wave a flag for the guy we support, and everyone else is an idiot. And it's terrible. And the long form stuff is part of the antidote to that. And I think that you mentioned the BBC. I mean, the podcast, The Missing Cryptoqueen, was BBC.
Yeah, that's true.
So the big outlets are a range of things. Yeah. Within the BBC, you do have the sort of short, sharp debates where you can be frustrated. I get frustrated with them. I'm just seeing people just shout. There's no effort to hear each other. There's no effort to, arrive at, the marketplace of ideas where side A and side B arrive at a synthesis and we're more informed. I'm not getting that. I'm just getting people hating each other. But then the BBC also will produce 10 hours on the Missing Cryptoqueen and allow me... and allow me to really go in deep. And so even within the outlets, there's real differences in the format and the style and the sort of content you get.
But I think also it's a change, and they're very different platforms per se, right? Where you're creating the Crypto Queen, you're building this podcast, and it's BBC trying to promote its podcast platform, where there it's about hours and people listening, whereas on the Medium it's just a number of eyeballs that I can capture, right? So it's a very different platform. And I also believe that marketplace of content has a very different user demographic. It's me who's going on there looking for something specific to entertain myself with and educate myself with, or get to know a new personality, right? Like you, I get to meet Jamie Bartlett, and I meet you through the Crypto Queen, and I get a personality, I get a flavor of your personality through the hours and hours that you've spent in building up this story. And Joe Rogan the same. You get a flavor of his personality. Lex Friedman as well, right? So you're getting a flavor of their personality, which then you trust or you don't trust. And you actually build.
You need that, I think. Increasingly, I think we need to know how stories are generated. We need to know increasingly if we trust the interlocutor, because we can't make sense of all the data ourselves. And so it makes some sense to get to know the people that are doing it. The problem with that is you end up with the shock jocks, you know, and the sort of it's all about me as the presenter and trust me and sort of Sean Hannity and I'll tell you what's going on. And we're kind of back to where we started then, which I just got to trust whatever you say. I really feel like all media outlets need to do more to show they're working out. How are they getting to this? Film us in the morning conference when we talk about the stories. Like, one of the big things that all of them get criticized for is, why have you led on story X rather than story Y? Why have you decided that's more important for me to know? Like, why have you ignored this one? Like, the mainstream media is not covering this, or it's not covering that. I want to see inside their morning briefing room. I'd like to see cameras inside their briefing room where me and you can sit down and watch how the editors are talking. And you might find, we might be like, you know what, I get why they're doing that. I actually understand why they've done that. But it's still too closed. There's not enough transparency in the workings out. And I think if people are going to carry on trusting the big outlets, they've got to open it up in that way a bit more.
Yeah, and I think, you know, sort of
anyway
to your argument around the platforms and Facebook evolving and Twitter coming up out of the woodworks, and you know, when we first had Web 1 and traditional media, it was all monopolized. It was, you know, the telcos, we had to pay $8 or £15 to do an international call per minute, right? We were hugely locked in to a pricing point. And then all of a sudden, you know, with Skype, with the likes of Facebook, with Twitter, we had the ability to communicate with our friends in other parts of the world for free. At least we thought it was free, because there was no financial immediate expense associated with that ability to communicate. Unlike your mother, who actually realized that actually I have to, what am I paying for? I don't trust this. If it's free, there's some sort of hook in there. I think most of the population just aped in and enjoyed that, only to realize that once we had 2-3 billion people on these networks, that all of a sudden there was a big set of data in one centralized entity that was managing and manipulating that data to drive, not manipulating, maybe monetizing and commercializing that data is a better word to say.
Or manipulating it and we wouldn't know. Or that's the thing about these data, just their existence and the fact they can be controlled by a small number of people makes you not trust. Even if they're doing nothing wrong, you're suspicious, because you think, but you could be, and I wouldn't even know about it. So why would I trust that you're not? I think one of the existence is quite corrupting.
One of the things that I was really surprised by was the fact that if you look even further back, I mean, in the old days, you know, these monopolies, these telcos, these credit card companies, these banks, they were all acquiring data. They were just keeping it in much smaller frameworks. They didn't have that mass amount of data, but they had smaller islands of data that they were then commercializing, also to their own benefit, but to their core partners. And they kept that very closed. And my biggest fear, also coming from crypto, what I loved about crypto is all of a sudden we had the ability to be more private. We had more freedom. We didn't have forms we needed to fill out for every little transaction. We didn't need to explain where we got these funds from. We could just trade. We could interact with each other and have, in a way, be happy, because there was always an exchange of value and an exchange of goods. And so that transaction allowed for communication, interaction, and ultimately a set of satisfaction across the participants. And my fear is now that if it goes into the government's hands, where the governments are now trying to build out CBDCs, their own currency, they already have a lot of access to social media, they're trying to control those. Where does that then go? And how do we participate in a world like that?
I think you're going to be better to answer that one than me, because I agree with you. It's like the Empire Strikes Back. And it was always kind of inevitable that would happen. Because you don't build revolutionary, fascinating new technology that allows ordinary people to communicate or move things around, assets around, without the governments starting to go,
Yeah.
This, not only is this a problem, this could actually work to our advantage, because I quite like the idea of an immutable add-only database where every record is always saved and stored,
Yeah.
that we can see,
Yeah.
that we could control.
Yeah.
That would make tax. We'd be able to collect tax way more easy. We could make sure that like everyone uses Bitcoin on the street, or like the central bank digital currencies on the streets when they're buying and selling stuff. Tax evasion, it will be impossible. You won't be able to spend £10 in cash at the supermarket, because we want to make sure who's buying what and when and da 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 da.
Yeah.
So it was always inevitable to me that this was coming, this was going to happen,
Yeah.
and you're going to end up with a sort of you can see very well why the Chinese government would love to have their own central currency system, or the Venezuelan government, or the whoever.
Yeah.
And this is going to probably be the next frontier in the sort of battle over the control for crypto. Because if you look back to the beginning, there was very early on a debate between those who thought this was a political movement, revolutionary, overthrow governments, new political order, and those who thought, no, this is just about making payments easier. It's efficient. It's simple. There's great value here. We could integrate it within the existing financial system. That was almost present from day one, that debate, if you like. And it's now, just as it's got bigger, that debate's got bigger.
And the debate,
that's where I feel like we are.
Yeah, and I think the debate has in this, every wave where popularity grows associated with crypto, the debate starts to shift towards the more regulated, governed framework, or the more sort of whereas the sort of traditionalists who are trying to separate state and money, very similar to church and state, that sort of philosophy then sort of gets pushed down for the benefit of profit, for the benefit of big institutions entering into the market, and then they all burn, everybody crashes and hurts. And as a result, then, we need to govern that because my buddy got pain, had felt pain, and all under the Consumer Protection Act, or the name and the words, right?
I mean, the thing is, I think it's partly, funnily enough, I think OneCoin and Dr. Ruja Ignatova was very clever in using this argument to promote their coin. Yeah. They would say, listen, the problem with crypto at the moment, the problem with Bitcoin, is that it's used by criminals, it's anarchic, it's anonymous, can't be controlled. Governments are never going to let this work because they'll be too scared of it. And you, ordinary person on the street, if you invest your money in Bitcoin and you forget your password or your private key, it's gone. Yeah. That's and 90% of ordinary people forget their passwords and forget their keys and lose their memory sticks and all these other things. That is most people. So she turns up and says, "Don't worry, if you've forgotten your password, phone up the head office. We'll just reset it for you. If your money is stolen, your crypto is stolen, OneCoin, we control the blockchain. Yeah. I'll just reverse the transaction and get it back for you." So it's just the old school way of doing it. But for most people, I think that makes more sense. Yeah. That's easier. That's simpler. Because I had here's a story for you. In 2015, when I was writing my book after the Darknet, it was called Radicals, and I was spending time with radical political movements. Yeah. I was spending time with the people that were trying to build like a nation state using cryptocurrency, using blockchain, saying we could have a nation on a blockchain kind of thing, and all the functions. And I bought 400 and Liberland. I went to Liberland on a boat. Yeah. Went to Liberland on a boat, and the police stopped us from making land.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I was there with Vit Jedlicka, the president of Liberland. Yeah. Me and Vit were on a boat heading towards Liberland, and the police boats turned up and basically ushered us away. So I've been to Liberland. Well, I've been nearly at Liberland. Yeah. I couldn't get there because of the police.
Sheesh.
So when I was with Vit, I bought 420 ETH for about £200. Okay, like $300. Yeah. All right, that's a good investment.
Definitely.
They all got stolen. They all got stolen when one of the exchange sites was basically hacked into, and everything was nicked.
Yeah.
Nothing I can't phone up I can't get insurance on it. I can't get the money back. It's all gone. And my experience is probably more common for ordinary people than like incredibly high levels of sophisticated key management, because it's too much for people. So I think part of the problem is, as crypto got bigger, consumers didn't know what the hell they were doing. And they were scared about it being lost. And then in comes, well, we'll have a central bank one, and that's going to be all official and going to all be controlled, and And I think the crypto community would be naive to sort of think that won't be very popular. People will like that. They will want that because they'll feel safer with it.
I think I was going to ask you, so given how early you got into the crypto world, right, and all the research that you've done, you've gone through a number of boom and busts, if you will, right, and particularly the bust in 2017, 2018. OneCoin was one of the big stories in that bust the second time round, and then this one round, right, and I feel, if I just read between the lines of what you're telling me, it's like really, it's the laziness, right? The people are just lazy and looking for a centralized institution that can take over the responsibility on their behalf to manage their own coins, their own keys. And the same, I'd say, was why we have Celsius, Voyager, Galaxy, Genesis. All of these entities are custodians on behalf of their users. Might just be more institutions today in this downturn, whereas there it was maybe more individuals and retail investors.
You are a tough man.
Okay.
I mean, lazy. I mean, I feel lazy might be a bit unfair, because the idea of self-custodial wallets is so new to people that it's going to take a while to get their heads around this concept. These are people that have grown up with banks looking after their money, and you're expecting within 2 years they understand self-custodial. It's too much. People are flawed. People are getting used to this. People are figuring it out. People are trying to work their way through it. And so I think in 10 years, if we're doing the same situation, and you say lazy, I'll say, yes, Stefan, I'm with you. We've had time. We've figured it out. We know. I think it's still too soon to say lazy. It's tough. It's difficult. It's confusing. It's complicated. And you've also got a lot of very sophisticated scam artists out there.
That's
people who are brilliant at tricking ordinary people, playing on their weaknesses, playing on their hopes and aspirations. And again, if you get a Nigerian prince scam email now, you are pretty unforgiving. But 15 years ago, you were more forgiving because it was all kind of, no one knew what they were doing. And I still think we're there. Give it another 10 years and we're like, okay, guys, you got to wise up now. We've had several booms and busts. We've had loads of these stories. You've heard about OneCoin. You've heard about Celsius. You've heard about all of this. And we'll start to figure it out. But I think it's still a bit too early.
Yeah, no, I mean, on the one hand, I apologize. I mean, even I remember when I first came, I was like, what the hell is non-custodial? What the fuck does that mean? Excuse my language. And
you're in this world, and you are you're a guy who understands this tech.
No, definitely. But I do feel that as an industry, we've also, or not only as an industry, as a civilization, we've numbed down our ability to learn and our need to continuously educate ourselves. And, we, as babies, we crawl, we walk, we fall over, we hit our head, we cut ourselves. And every time we get better at walking because we hurt ourselves and we know what it's like. If we can't hold our balance, it hurts, right? And so I feel it's the responsibility largely of our educational institutions to keep up to speed and constantly provide us with the tools and the mindset to be critical in terms of our thinking, to be where do we go and what tools do we use to do our research so that we are up to speed and have a better ability to understand how to manage keys. And I don't know, maybe that's too idealistic.
I think that's true. No, it is. I mean, it is a bit idealistic when you look at how slow the education system is to ever change and ever teach anything. But I agree with you. Like we're miles behind this stuff, and it's not just the schools. I think it's the ability of the society to learn from its mistakes generally. Because one of the reasons we tried to make the story of OneCoin was because let's be honest, people who invested in it, the 1 million people who invested up to 4 billion euros in this, they're probably not getting any of that money back. All I hoped for was that people listen to that story and learn from it and think, shit, okay, if someone comes up and says, I have a multi-level marketing company, I'm selling you cryptocurrency, we'll manage the coins for you, you will be able to sell it, but not yet. Could you just hold off another year and then you can sell it on an exchange? People are going to be like, hang on a minute, I've heard this story before. This is a load of bullshit. And if you're guaranteeing me 20% annual returns for sure, why hasn't Warren Buffett bought every single one of your coins already? Because he's got the world's best brains working out how he should invest. And he's not touching this. So why should I invest in OneCoin with your 300% annual return guarantee if Warren Buffett won't invest in it? David down the street, I know you think you're early to this, but if you're hearing about this, you're already at the bottom of the pyramid, mate. I'm sorry. I know you think you're near the top. It just doesn't. So we hope that those lessons become part of the fabric of like broader societal understanding. And people have got a lot going on in their heads. People have got a lot of things to worry about. And I know that people into crypto sometimes think that everything is about crypto. But for most people, it is still like paying the bills, and my car's got a puncture, and like, how the hell am I going to fix this? And then there's this crypto shit going on. Too much. So to me, it's like if there's our dream was that maybe few people were approached with a clone scam, and they'd be like, I remember hearing a podcast 3 years ago about something like this. Do you know what? I'll pass. Thanks very much. And I'll try and learn a bit more about it first. That was it. And that's how you learn as a society.
But I mean, just on that note, I look at what you're saying and the promises of 300% return, and I got that. I mean, let's face it. The whole Terra Luna Anchor example was 20% return. I'm going to get there. Who knows where it's coming from? So it was just another scenario that was exactly the same, just sort of mirrored slightly different. This time it was on the blockchain, but it was still a promise of a return that got people to get in, and as a result, a hell of a lot of us lost a lot of money in that process.
Well, I think that these stories hopefully don't turn people off crypto entirely, but become much more skeptical about any kind of guaranteed return. And I think it's the job of the crypto. Sometimes the crypto community, in my opinion, and I kind of feel like I've one foot in, one foot out, really, can sometimes they can hype things up so much. This is the future. This is happening. It's impossible for this to go down. And they're credible people, and they're appearing on credible news programs. And I think they can sometimes inadvertently, it ends up with an ordinary person 6 months later putting their money in OneCoin or Terra Luna or whatever, because they keep hearing this thing from credible business people that it's going to go up forever. So when they see promised annual returns of 20%, and they remember seeing businessmen saying, this is going to the moon, like it's financially, it's the best instrument ever, it's always going to go up. It tallies up to them that 20% sounds quite reasonable. So I hope as well the crypto world will dampen down some of the language about not guaranteed returns, but this is always going up, this is mathematical certainty, blah blah blah, because that might inadvertently make ordinary people think, yeah, cool, 20%, I'm in. That sounds reasonable. Because as I understand it with Terra Luna, a lot of the people that put in their money into those kinds of things and into those stable coins were like, that's a much more realistic and honest and reasonable and safer bet than putting $1 million into Dogecoin and hoping it goes up 5,000% again.
Yeah, no, that's really true. I mean, I think, one thing that, I mean, maybe why we're also jaded, or at least some of us are jaded, is when I first got into it, there was Bitcoin, and there was only Bitcoin, and I really didn't see anything else. And I remember I had Ethereum on my desk, and I passed on Ethereum. Unlimited supply, how does that work? Why do we need another coin? The Bitcoin's working perfectly all right. And it was only when transactions started to slow down, costs started to hit $100 for a transaction, and when that just sort of really not why I got into Bitcoin. And so then I was looking at alternatives, and there was a community that decided to fork off and create Bitcoin Cash, which was going to have slightly bigger blocks. It's going to move faster. It's going to be ultra cheap. And so then it was like, but until then, I was so committed on anything that came across my plate or table, I just wouldn't look at. And I feel crypto is very religious in that sense, that when you get into, I'm in OneCoin, I don't care, there's only one coin, everything else, I just buy into it, and I'm so committed, I'm so engaged into this community that all of a sudden nothing else is true, everybody else is a liar. Until it just becomes a real cult following, maybe.
That it can do sometimes, and I say all this as someone, as you can tell, who really likes the technology and has been following it for a long time, and I'm not against it. I worry what the scams can do sometimes. That's really the thing. But I think that point you've made is so important, because this happened with OneCoin. OneCoin was really a straight pyramid Ponzi scheme. There are crypto coins that overpromise and underdeliver. There are ones where people have maybe exaggerated where they think the price might be, but OneCoin was just a pyramid scheme. It was different to the others in a way. In fact, it wasn't really a cryptocurrency. It's an MLM scam. It's an MLM, a multi-level marketing scam, where the product of the MLM pyramid scheme was a fake cryptocurrency. So it's more classically defined as an MLM scam than a crypto scam in truth. But anyway.
I mean,
but what happened? But this is so, because this feeds into exactly what you just said. A lot of the crypto community did say OneCoin is a scam. OneCoin is a pyramid scheme. OneCoin is a Ponzi scheme. The problem is the Bitcoin maximalists would say OneCoin is a pyramid scheme. And then they would say in the next breath, Ethereum is also a pyramid scheme. Ripple is a pyramid scheme. Litecoin is a pyramid scheme. So the OneCoin investors were like, well, all right, but Ethereum is backed by these amazing technologists. So if they're all pyramid schemes, OneCoin actually was a pyramid scheme. But if you call everything a pyramid scheme, how are you supposed to tell the difference? So I feel like everyone calling every other project than theirs a pyramid scheme is why actual pyramid schemes can just go. Yeah, they go in unnoticed.
Yeah, I think one. Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I feel that though, outside of Bitcoin, really the narrative has shifted into much more. We have to live in a multi-coin world, and my view at the moment, at least, is there are a lot of blockchains out there today, layer ones, that are trying to address the problem. And as the world tokenizes, they alone can't handle the volume. I mean, look at them. One goes down, the other one's too expensive, the other one's too slow. So they're all having their struggles. So there's no way one single blockchain can handle that. So do we have multiple chains that all interact with each other and operate with each other? Or is there only one that will come out on top at some point in time, 5 years from now or something, right? I mean, that's sort of
mate, yeah. You're above my technical know-how now.
Yeah, I know,
because I don't know, but I do know this. Dr. Ruja Ignatova, when she was pushing the OneCoin scam, what she kept saying to people was Bitcoin is too slow to ever become the global, digital cash that it claims to. The blocks are too slow to process. No one's going to want to wait an hour or whatever it is for a transaction to go through. How are you going to use it in a shop? Well, you're going to stand there for an hour waiting to make sure it's confirmed. That's why OneCoin, which mines 100 times faster, is going to overtake Bitcoin. So she was actually she claimed she was trying to fix the problems that she could see with Bitcoin. I mean, it was all made up, but you can see how
Yeah,
clever she
definitely.
was in what she was saying. But as for the broader future of the ecosystem, I mean, given how little I predicted where it ended up now
Yeah.
5 years ago, I don't even want to begin. I've got no idea.
But I mean, from your perspective, you've spent like a large portion of, let's say the last 4 to 5 years really deep into OneCoin and doing all the research around there. And I mean, but by the sounds of it, I mean, I interpret that she was acting maliciously. She was trying to spin it in a way and misrepresent the narrative. I mean,
I think that, yeah, I mean, she, as of last week, she appeared on the
yeah,
FBI's top
yeah,
10
I
most
saw
wanted
that.
fugitives
Yeah,
list. Yeah, so she is now, she's back in the news big time. Now, the FBI contends, and have always contended, that she intended this to be a scam from day
yeah,
one. She always knew what she was doing. I think she never planned for it to get as big as
yeah,
it did. She
yeah,
thought, you know what I'll do? 2014,
yeah,
15. I'll raise some money through some kind of
yeah,
ICO. I'll make a few promises, but who
yeah.
doesn't in this world? Who doesn't have to
Of
exaggerate
course, yeah.
slightly what
All
their product will
entrepreneurs
do?
are
The whole
do
thing,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're all
yeah,
faking it till we're making it. The whole thing will probably collapse, and I'll underdeliver in a matter of months. But I'll have made a
yeah,
few million, and I'll disappear, and I'll put it down as an honest mistake, and I'll blend into all the other
yeah,
ICOs that collapse.
yeah,
Who's going to know? The problem is this multi-level
yeah,
marketing. The way it was sold was just the same as
yeah, yeah,
Amway or
yeah,
Herbalife. They're not illegal companies at all. They're
yeah,
legitimate companies. But the sales technique is you get friends and family to recruit friends and family who recruit
yeah,
friends and family, and a commission
yeah,
goes up all the way. Big. She sold it through that, and it grew so fast that within months she'd sold like 1 billion coins that she didn't have. I think she had a small blockchain, probably a
yeah,
Bitcoin fork, that she was just trying to use that to say, look, here's my revolutionary new coin. It's actually just a fork of Bitcoin with 2.1 billion coins rather than 21 million. But the block speed is similar, and we're going to sell those coins and claim it's X, Y, and Z, but really it's like Bitcoin. But she just started selling coins directly to people that she didn't own. People were selling, like, I'm selling you 10,000 OneCoin. They haven't even been
yeah,
generated on the blocks yet, but I'll have to put your data, your coins, on an
yeah,
Excel spreadsheet and hold around and hope maybe it will catch up. But it didn't catch up. It just grew and grew and grew and grew, to the point that she'd sold billions of coins that didn't exist and would have taken a year to be
yeah,
created by her blockchain. And I think that's the point at which she could have given up, but she kept going, selling more and more and more and more, because she had
yeah,
thousands of people around the world that were selling this for her every day. She couldn't really control it. It just took off, and as with the hype of crypto, she was out. She
yeah,
lost control of her own company, and it turned into a multi-billion-dollar scam
yeah.
almost by accident.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, I mean, it comes across in your podcast as well. I'm going to steal a bit of, heads up, close your ears if you don't want to if you want to hear some of the story. But you then go and look, and there's a developer that you look to recruit to actually help build the blockchain and take that backlog and then add it to the blockchain, who then refused to actually do it because it's like, oh my God, this has already gone too far down the track. I can't fix that. And the other element is, yeah,
Exactly.
and the other element,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's a key thing. That's a key thing for you
yeah,
guys in the crypto world. It was a
yeah,
Bitcoin guy, a
yeah,
Bitcoin fanatic, who was kind of the one that really
yeah,
blew the whistle on this. So this is why it's not an anti-blockchain, anti-crypto story, because the Bitcoin guy looks at her offer. She's basically says to him, "Can you build
yeah,
me a blockchain?" And he's like, "You've been selling this to people for the last
yeah,
2 years. You don't have a functioning blockchain? I mean, what the
yeah,
hell have you been doing?" And he's worried. I think it's exactly that. I think what she wanted him to do was to reconcile the coins she sold that didn't exist on the blockchain with the ones that did exist on a blockchain into one brand new blockchain that was bigger. And he basically just said,
yeah,
I'm not doing this. And not only that, I'm going to tell everyone what you've been doing, basically. So it was a Bitcoin guy that's kind of the hero of the story in a sense, because he's the one that comes in and sort of really blows the whistle on it all and says, I love Bitcoin, and I think coins like this are what's going to destroy the community. So I'm gonna call it out.
But like every entrepreneur and startup, right? I mean, you're always going out there evangelizing your platform, your product. You're trying to get people to adopt it. And I think the difference really, I mean, I look at Ethereum, for example, they did a masterful job in really just acquiring developers to build on top of the Ethereum platform and use the Solidity framework or developer language to be able to build out smart contracts and open source that to everybody so that they can then go out and build. And in a way, it was just building a mob, and it took it down a direction that made it legitimate because actually people were building on this and building different blockchains that would allow it to scale versus scaling on that spreadsheet by that master salesperson on that MLM track or branch, right? Versus the other one. So it was interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So why did you let it pass on your desk? Why did you not invest when you saw it? You should have seen this. They're building a framework for other people to build on. And we know from like Facebook and the internet, that's the trick. You build it and you get people to come in and build their own stuff. And that's what's generating the excitement and the interest and the kind of, the exponential growth. So, but she sort of...
No, we had that on Bitcoin. Bitcoin had that. We had color coins before, so you could create your own coins on there. So we had we had pre-consensus where we could then actually do really fast finality for transactions in the mempool. But we needed to improve the code base. The code for Bitcoin is really bad, right? I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto, for all his skills, he's not a brilliant developer. And I think when I was running Bitcoin.com, one of the core investments in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem was going towards rewriting that code base in a more object-oriented framework or design, right? And so, but the community at the Bitcoin maxis did not want that, right? That was not true to the original cause, and you're forking it and you're creating something different.
Yeah.
And the tenacity.
It's like the constitutionalists, like in the US, the Constitution. It was written this way, and that there is sometimes a good argument for saying let's stick with that.
And I passed mainly because I should have known, because I was with developers. I was building hackathons. I was trying to acquire developers to grow and build on Android, build on iPhone, on BlackBerry, on this API set, to build towards this feature, towards your Apple Watch or whatever it was, or in those days it was the Jabra, sort of all these different devices. And but the unlimited supply is what really sort of there was something that wasn't quite right. But either way, back to Ruja and the OneCoin, right? You've done a lot of research. You've spent a lot of time in that, and it was a fascinating story. And how do you sort of, coming out of that and your experience in that, I mean, you're still involved in it. It's still a big, you've just come out with the book, sort of, how do you sort of find the next thing after something so invigorating? You've spent so much of your time and life associated and dedicated to trying to unmask that.
Yeah. I think that for a while, you just got to accept, I've got to accept that I was very lucky to have this story. And it's like, it becomes a bit of a duty to do everything to get it out there, to get it read, to get it seen. There's no point writing a book or doing a podcast if people don't listen to it. And in your little world, you think everyone is. But there's so many people obviously never heard of it, never know anything about it. And I feel like your job as a writer, you stop being a writer when you put that pen down and you turn into a salesperson. And you got to put as much time and effort in selling it as you have got in writing it or making it. And even if I ever get bored talking about it, because it's been my life for 4 years, it's like the Rolling Stones. You want them to play Start Me Up. You don't want to hear their new stuff. And they are lucky to be in a position where thousands of people want to hear Start Me Up. So they keep playing Start Me Up. And I feel like that with this. I'm going to be privileged to be able to keep talking about this now. This is the story I'm most associated with. I'm lucky for that. I'll go out there and evangelize. I'll talk about it to anyone, and I'll stick with the story until it's really fully until I'm standing in the audience in Southern District of New York courtroom watching her on the stand being charged, with money laundering and securities fraud and wire fraud, and I probably just won't do anything else until that moment.
So you think she's still alive?
I do think she's still alive. I've had far too many extremely credible tip-offs and leads to make me think she's dead. It's a possibility. It's definitely possible, and I always put that number at about 20 to 25%. But I personally think she is alive. For example, just extremely credible people who've looked me in the eye and said, I saw her. That was her. And I saw her at this point in this place. And a lot of those sightings do tally up in terms of her movement. So I don't want to give away everything because obviously the book does talk about all of this stuff as well. But no, I think she's alive and I think she's moving around. And I think that's why the FBI put her on the list.
Wow.
Because I think the FBI knows that she's moving, which is why the public can help. Public can't help with a most wanted list if she's holed up in a compound in Dubai. But they can help if she's moving, if she's being forced to move around. So that's why, and the reward they've offered is $100,000 for information. And I think it's not much for, if she's being protected by corrupt governments, what's 100,000? But if she's moving, what about her chef? What about her driver? What about her bodyguard? People for whom $100,000
make a difference.
That might be enough. That might make a difference. So that's why I think that it matters.
Interesting. Yeah. No, it's like, I mean, I feel that's a minuscule amount for the vast volumes. And I think you said it was 4 billion, right? I've heard numbers go up to 14 billion, right? And if I look at some of the investments out of China, out of Africa, right? And I think you go into the deep, darkest Africa to a farmer who actually bought OneCoin, still believes in the OneCoin, right? So it's like,
still believes, still believes, and people still believe today, today. And they're still promoting. It's still being promoted around the world. So it's still out there. And in every corner of the world, you'll find someone that thinks OneCoin any day now, they'll turn their thousands of OneCoin at a current price of like 45 euros, totally made up. They'll be able to sell them for 45 euros each. And they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And they're expecting any day to get rich, even today, after everything. So it's quite a tragic story as well, of what's happened to these people. But I suppose it's not really going to be finished until she's captured, just because there are those people that still believe. And given what I've seen, I reckon even once she's captured and convicted, they'll still believe it. They'll still think OneCoin is going to one day become, fulfill all their dreams, because it's like a religion to them now. That there's no arguing with those people, sadly. But I was once asked, just in the pursuit of Dr. Ruja, I was once asked, would you do a podcast trying to find Satoshi Nakamoto as well? And I was like, I don't no, because he hasn't done anything wrong, and he clearly doesn't want to be found. Forget about the Craig White thing for a minute. So I don't know but let's just forget that doesn't exist. I don't want to. This person made choices, didn't break any rules, doesn't want to be found. She's different. So I feel obliged to carry on until I find her.
And so there's one hand, you're still on the pursuit to discovery, right? You're still looking to find her. But then on the other hand, you've created this phenomenal story, done lots of different research. I mean, is there the desire, after you've done the podcast, you've done the book, you're speaking a lot around on this topic, to do a movie, really hit mainstream and try to get a movie for this? Is that sort of, do you think that will really open the eyes of people and get much more adoption?
It's amazing. Like, you can have a big podcast hit and a book, but it reaches nothing like a Netflix series or a movie. The people it reaches are different. The funny thing is, something strange is going on with journalism at the moment. We're all obsessed with true crime stories, and the big platforms are looking for those stories, and they want to buy them, and they want to turn them into movies and dramas and documentary series. And there's a lot of activity around this OneCoin story now. There's a lot of there's documentaries being made. There's drama series. I think there is a movie in the works already. Yeah, but it's that is going to take it to a whole new level and a whole new audience, which I think is important, as long as they sort of stay true to the story. Because this could be the one time that millions of people would read or hear or watch about this. And we tried with the podcast to be really honest with the truth and accurate, and understand what blockchains were and the subtle difference between them, and why it's not the same as Bitcoin, but this is why, and this is how it works. We hopefully the big platforms will do that too, because they have a chance to educate a lot of people. But is it going to be exciting enough for them? I don't know.
Yeah, no, just to your point, right? I really think that the movie has to be accurate, and good quality productions make a big difference, right? And if you look at the Netflix series on Escobar and how they did that, I mean, that went really well. It was really quality. It was a good investment in the right product. And so I'd love to see, the work that you've put into a lot of this be reflected and have that same sort of quality paid attention to a movie if it's done right. It's super fascinating. We've gone on for hours already, and I feel we could do another hour easily. But I am conscious that we wanted to keep this to about an hour, and I really thank you for your time and your inputs and insights. And we were covering lots of different perspectives, not just crypto. So
you were taking me a bit out of my comfort zone with some of the technical stuff, but it's really good I really like speaking to actual crypto people about this, because it's a very different conversation to when I would speak to, if you like, an ordinary audience, like a book reading audience.
Yeah.
They have a very different take on what's going on here. So it's great to get the crypto people, their perspective on this and why it matters. And so thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, no, and really what I liked is the fact that you're bringing, again, a different perspective. How do we protect users? How do we need to do much more in education. We need more people like yourselves going into the insights and actually maybe waking up us as an industry. It doesn't take 2 years to understand it. Maybe certain people that have gone full crypto get it, but otherwise it just takes a bit longer. And the tools today, though, I would argue, are way better than when I first got my Bitcoin J wallet. Today, it's much easier to use, and the services have just grown in terms of what I can do. But we need to make sure that those tools are akin to what we're experiencing in a fintech world on a Web3 infrastructure, and that's my whole thing.
Anyways,
that's
going to be good.
Super. How can people? Do you have a Twitter account where people can follow you? Do you do?
I do. At Jamie J Bartlett. I often post any new developments on this story. They're usually there first, so that's a good place to start. Yeah.
So follow Jamie J Bartlett on Twitter, guys. Get the latest news. You'll hear it there first, and then if you haven't already, check out his podcast. We'll provide a link below as well. It's an amazing podcast. It's multi-series. You can binge listen. And then the book's coming out, and hopefully maybe sometime soon a movie that you can be involved in to choose a director to do that.
Yeah, let's see about that.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you, Jamie. Awesome.
Thanks again.
Awesome
Thank you again for having me, mate. Thank you, Stefan.
Thanks.